good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Power of Now. I'm Coach Mitchell.
And I'm Coach Darren.
Together we are MD,
Coaching
Coaching
and Consulting.
We do apologize for being a few minutes late, but technical difficulties got the best of us, and we were all prepared, and then, of course, technology steps in. So, anyway, welcome to the Power of Now. Tonight, we are super excited about our topic of discussion, and we really want you to engage with us on this topic because it is a topic that you should take on personally. It is actually a topic of a personal challenge. So tonight we will be talking about. Good evening, Aisha. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, Dr. Nicole. Thank you for joining us. We will be talking about who am I? More than self-reflection, but self-introspection, self-awareness, self-discovery, that journey of life. Good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining us. So, Coach Darren and I would really appreciate any comments, any feedback as we walk through this topic of who am I when we talk about, self-discovery and being self-aware. So, we want to talk about the woke culture. Well, tonight we want to talk about the woke person. So, Coach.
Yes. Start off with a quote to help get things started. So, everything I've been and everything I desire to be is who I am. Quote is by Claude Garretson. And I share that because that does define who we are. Now remember, it's a kind of a moving. So in terms of when you look back at who you were, some people might want to think, well, I'm not that person anymore. Well, you may not be that person, but part of who you were is what brought you to where you are. And it also took part in who you desire to be. So all of that culminates into who you are at every given moment.
Good evening, Tanise. Good evening, Sanji. Thank you for joining us. Absolutely, Coach.
Yes. So I just want to say, when we ask people, answer the question, who am I? And I just want to say, not the question who I am, all right? Who am I? Most people will go blank. You usually catch them off guard. And when they do respond, they respond with what? Their title, their name, their roles. But that's not who you are. Who you are is on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And that's the introspection that we have to do. As I refer to it, is go deeper. Go deeper. As we peel back the layers, it's not, something simplistic.
No, it's not.
The journey of self-discovery is really a complex endeavor because you really have to be willing to accept flaws and all, because we are not perfect beings, right? And if you've lived life, there's some experiential components that come into play. There's some spiritual things that come into play. There's some genetic dispositions that come into play. I mean, there's a whole plethora of things that make up who we first believe ourselves to be, think ourselves to be, versus who we truly are. So tonight we hope that we can peel back some of the layers, of course, with some of your input, and talk through how do we really tap into who we really are.
Yeah, as Coach Mitchell mentioned, it is a path of self-discovery. For those who may have read my post earlier, I mentioned we all start out, or many of us start out on a path of self-improvement. And if you're on a continuous path of self-improvement, not these one-hit wonders, those who are really committed to this constant improvement, you're going to come to this point.
Hold on a second. I'm being told we have a major echo.
Okay. Check your mute.
Okay.
I'm muted.
Everything
Yep.
everything is muted on your side. Everything is muted on my side.
And volume is down everywhere.
Okay. How are we now? We still have an echo? Let us know. We're going to keep going, but let us know if the echo still exists. And we'll try to pinpoint. It's still there.
Still there?
Still there.
Yeah.
How about now? It's on my end. Okay. How about now? Am I still echoing? Okay, that's better. Okay. I think we're okay. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I left off, referring to the quote that I had earlier, where I talked about self-improvement and how self-improvement for those who are on that path will eventually lead to self-discovery. And I also pointed out that though self-improvement, I've been in that area industry for decades, though it is important, as I said, it's awesome.
Hi, Ray.
One problem with self-improvement, I said it tends to lean outward, meaning it focuses on goals and achievements. And those things they're great, all right? They're wonderful. But it doesn't really touch on the inner. And that's where the truth really resides. That's why you see people who will achieve a lot of things and then self-destruct because they didn't take time to do the inner work. And that's the foundation. And unfortunately, we get very little education, training, or anything like that on doing the inner work.
Right.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, we want to tap into just some of the things that you may want to do that will focus on your inner self. And I just want to put the disclaimer out there. Remember, this is an awareness session. And I always say, you know what? We're not going to solve all the problems of the world or your world.
That's right.
In less than an hour.
And not only that, even though we're MD coaching and consulting, we're not doctors. We're not psychotherapists or psychologists, nor are we sociologists. My major, I did start off in psychology, but I didn't end there. So just want to put that disclaimer out there. Okay. All right. So
my question, what it is, and again, I don't ask this, have you ever taken time to ask that question? Have you ever really looked into who are you? If you were asked that question, how would you respond? I'm just curious, if anybody in the audience.
Please put the comment that was that question was posed for engagement. So if you were asked the question,
who are you?
Who are you? What response would you give? I did start off last week in sort of, cascading over into, segueing over into some of the responses that I would give if it were me. So we'll give you a second or two to post your response to who are you?
It's out the question, who am I? So it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound like you're being challenged. This is the self-reflection, so.
Right. So one response is not a straight answer because we're such complex beings. And I believe that's Sanji. I'm not sure because it's not giving me the name, but you're absolutely, it is complex. And that's why it takes, years, really. Oh, this is Ian. I'm sorry. So Ian, thank you. So that's Ian Duhart. Thank you for joining us, Ian. That because we are complex beings And because of our environment, things that we've been exposed to, things that we've heard about ourselves, or been told about ourselves, the initial knee-jerk response is to go to, one, your role, and two, how you've been defined up until that point without thinking about really who you are.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, yes, we are complex beings, but when it comes to learning who we are, I think why it becomes complex is because it's been ignored. And the layers have just been piled on us as who we should be and who we have learned to be. Whereas when you just take time, the introspection, and you do it over and over, you will find that the questions are pretty straightforward, but the answers become hard. And this kind of ties back to our discussion last week, because our ego plays such a strong role and our fears play such a strong role that it hinders us from actually being honest with ourselves. So that creates a level of complexity. Like I said, the society in which we live in, I think, adds more to it. I think being complex beings makes it more beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's the society in which we live that we've been, jaded.
Yep. Exactly. Because not only, I mean, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with this, but even if you look at politics from a party line perspective, people will identify with being a Democrat, a Republican, a liberal, or conservative, an independent, belonging to the Green Party, you name it, without really knowing what the ideals, the values, and the morals of those parties actually represent. But they'll associate, one, because of an impression, two, because they've been told that's where they belong, but never really understanding what they've co-signed to.
Here's
So
the reason why you want to ask this question, and why you really want to work on coming up with an answer, because it's a fundamental question that is also perplexing, but it gets you to really find your true identity. And quite often, when we don't have that, we tend to go what is known as identity struggle. And therefore, as they say, we lose ourselves.
Absolutely.
We end up getting involved in things, searching for some place to belong, and whether it may be somebody in the audience or somebody that you know. You see it, where they get involved. For instance, if you see somebody walking around with a whole bunch of garb representing some team that they have no vested interest in, they don't have an identity. See, when you are comfortable with your own identity, you don't wear anybody else's. Not to that point. And that's what happens when you don't have your own identity. When you haven't defined who you are, you get lost in someone else's identity. So you want to prevent that. And like I said, we're going to talk about just some of the things that you can do to help you define, even if you don't know at this moment, but it will help you define who you are.
Absolutely, Sanji. So I'm glad you segued with your name, started with your name, because, you're still coming up as Facebook user, even though you have, followed the process of, allowing StreamYard access. But nevertheless, Sanji states that she's a fierce, bold, unapologetic woman, and everything else is wrapped up into those characteristics: mom, sister, wife, friend, etc. So that is so true. But Coach, like you were saying, the identity part is what you have to build your foundation upon.
Yes.
And that's where it starts, building a solid and strong foundation and having a strong sense of who you are,
Yes.
of who you are.
Now, why is also that important? Because when you know who you are, it establishes your boundaries for yourself that you set for yourself, that things you'll do, things you won't do, and it sets boundaries for what you will allow other people to do or do not or not do. Mhm. It creates your space. It creates your aura, where you feel comfortable with yourself, and you no longer feel you have to explain. People will know because it basically becomes who you are. So, if you have not truly taken time to define who you are, well, what are some of the steps that you might want to do? Well, first thing you want to do is you have to let go of the ego.
And we talked about that last
Yes,
week.
the ego will hinder your ability to your self-realization. Now, why is that? Because the ego doesn't like change.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I also think part of that is when we talk about the ego, letting go of the ego, and we talk about the pride that comes with it, there are other things that come into play.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, it does. The ego doesn't like change because it exposes some of our vulnerabilities. And I think that's one of the bottom lines. It exposes our vulnerabilities, and we don't want people to see the vulnerable side of us,
Mhm.
right? But it also, what the ego does is it doesn't allow you to see yourself. And it allows you to pass more judgment on others than it does for you to do an introspective assessment of yourself.
Mhm. Mhm. So once you say that you're willing to give up, your ego, then you begin with the self-assessment.
Mm-hmm.
You begin with the reflection, and with Michael Jackson's song, years ago, you start with the man in the mirror, and you have, like I said, that's why you got to drop the ego, because that ego will send a reflection that's not true. So if you really want to find who you are, uh, you know, you have to be willing to just shut down the ego. Now, we mentioned last week, the ego's not totally 100% bad. It has some purpose. But right now, you got to take control and not let your ego do it. So,
Yeah, and I think you said you hit on something so that I think is par for the course for the conversation, but yet when you hear the same message in different sectors of whatever part of your life you're in, then you know it must be coming from a place higher than yourself, because the reflection, this morning we ended prayer on the reflection of yourself in the mirror,
mm,
right? So you saying that now, it just reminded me of what was a part of corporate prayer this morning, that, okay, so this must be something that we all that are in, listening, the listening realm, must be ready to hear and receive and work on,
you know,
which is ourselves.
yes. And I've been saying, before I go to the next point, I've been saying this for the last few sessions, that we are in this era. And if you haven't been exposed to it, you're not aware of it, you need to make yourself aware of it, because it is happening. Where we are transitioning from knowledge mastery into self mastery. So that's why these topics you're going to see coming up, and it's happening all over, is basically aligned with people seeking the highest state of consciousness. It's just a shift, because people are tired of what we've gone through over the last few years and why some people are still there. That's because they're choosing to be. But there are a lot of people who are just saying, enough is enough. I can't deal with this. There has to be something better.
Mm-hmm.
And they're seeking it in various ways. So, to your point, yeah, it's in this sphere that we're in, but that sphere is also bigger than us.
Exactly.
Already. So, when you begin doing a self-assessment, as we said in probably one of our earlier sessions, you do this with no judgment. Mhm. I recently learned the difference between, say, judgment and discernment. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Judgment is a lower level way of looking at things. Discernment is at a higher level, where again, it's more of the observation. So you want to just look at yourself completely. Mhm. And you want to start asking yourself, and this is such a hard thing, I think, for most people. If you ask them, what are your strengths? Some people will go, I got to really think about that. You ask somebody what their flaws are, they could probably hone right in on it. So you want to look at your strengths, you want to look at your flaws, you want to look at your values,
Mhm.
your beliefs,
Yep.
your thoughts, emotions. And when it comes to your emotions, you definitely want to look at your fears.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, we always talk about your beliefs, emotions, thoughts, and stories. They all become part of this process. And then you ask yourself the question, where did these come from? Well, why do I believe this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, is critical for somebody who tends to be very prejudicial, and that prejudicial, or racist. Because prejudice, like I said, we all have prejudices.
Right. We could be prejudiced against anything.
Yes. But when they're so deeply embedded in you that you will ostracize any group of people, you'd have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Where does it come from when you make statements like all of them, everybody? Who do you know all?
Them and they.
Yeah, you start to question yourself saying, well, is that proper? So you want to begin, looking, at those things. Also, you want to look at who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because who I am is not stagnant.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It is an evolution,
Yes.
and it is ever evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Because every day, I want to say it this way: every day you die to something.
Yes.
But every day that you die to something is the day that you live for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think that the evolution of who we are, we shouldn't let go of the fact that who I am today is not who I'm going to be tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Especially if we're looking to grow.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's the key. If we're looking to grow, who I am today, I want to be a better version of myself so that I show up better for others.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So when you start asking yourself, or observing your beliefs, your values, all those things, and you pretty much.
Hi, Demetrius. Hi, Deb.
Where you can ask yourself, where did they come from? Did you just pick up values and beliefs from your parents? Mm-hmm. Did you pick them up because from the dominant culture? All those things come into play. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just understanding these aspects of yourself, and are they truly authentic?
Exactly. Because we have, like you said earlier, biases that may have been taught to us. We have limiting beliefs.
Yes.
That we carry with us. like we may not be good enough, or, you'll never, some cultures don't look at money the same way.
Mhm.
Religion
Mhm.
versus a spiritual walk with God, your belief systems, your fears, all of that can be challenging to our identity,
Yes.
right? So, unless we are really cognizant and trying to cultivate a level of self awareness beyond the mediocrity of everyday life, then we won't ever rise above that.
Nope.
And we have to recognize
Mhm.
that there are so many things in our environment that impact our growth, our development, our interactions, our relationships, even our careers.
Oh, absolutely. Because part of this, is finding your authentic self, and this is why I also found this interesting when you begin to study, and I'm thinking about some of the questions that you're asking, what it means to be your authentic self, and I think about things that people say, you know, um, about being authentic, and I come to realize you're not, because if you have to state it, you're not. You're stating it to make yourself believe, but you don't just become authentic. It is a process. It is a process that I like to say, when they take a piece of metal and they shape it into a saber or a sword, it has to go through fire. It has to go through fire, and then it gets hit. It gets hit, it gets banged. That's why you got to go through hell to find who you are. A pleasant walkway. You got to go through changes, because it's in those changes, it's in that darkness, as they call it, dark night of the soul, when you're forced to look within.
Mhm.
I mean, think about it. How many times do we really look within when things are,
Going like we
Yes.
think they should be
right?
going.
Like we think they should be. Everything, we're enjoying the moment.
We're enjoying the moment.
Even from a self-improvement perspective, we tend not to analyze our success the way we analyze our failures, though we should. So it's just a natural thing. So it's the darkness that we have to be in to begin having that moment where we start to say, hey, who am I?
Exactly.
Wow.
It's like the diamond.
Yes.
You don't get a diamond until it is cold pressed, until it goes through the process of all of the pressure to press off all of the coal, all of the soot, all of the dark, all of the grime, in order for it to shine through.
Yes.
And that's why this is not an easy endeavor.
No.
And that's why it is very complex. But there's some things that we can do. And I think as we go through the process, and like you said, if we have to shout our authenticity, look at me, I'm here, I'm proud, I'm authentic, I have arrived, I am, right? I am, that we're still in a place of uncertainty. And we still don't have that level of confidence in ourselves to show up as our true, authentic selves.
Yes.
Right? And I think that we have to be compassionate to ourselves, realizing that we are a work in progress every day, because every day you're going to be challenged. Your value system is going to be challenged. Your morals are going to be challenged, but you have to give yourself permission to grieve through the process when you're peeling back the layers and you're looking at the uncomfortable truth of who you are. You have to give yourself permission to grieve the loss of dying to that old self. But guess what? You get to celebrate who you're becoming.
Yes.
Who you're becoming. So you give yourself room, you grieve it, be compassionate to yourself, but you're giving yourself room to celebrate who you're becoming.
Because actually, before I get to that, I'm saying step 3, action 3. I just want to go back to looking at the emotions and looking at your fears. Because those are the things that really hold us back. In addition to being, he's absolutely right. He is absolutely right. Did we do a segment? I think we touched on self-compassion, but I don't know wholly, but that's something that most of us miss. When we come to things that we're afraid of, they tend to really hold us back from also allowing our true self to speak. So you want to look at, what are you afraid of? What are you avoiding? And what part of you have you been hesitant about developing or letting out? There's the writer Joseph Campbell. I think many of us might be familiar. I believe it was him who wrote about the hero's journey. I think it was one of his most popular writings. But he had a quote that says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." So you think about it. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So you have to be willing to address those things that you are fearful of that are within.
I just saw a vignette, a little vignette that illustrates that very thing. And it shows an individual trying to find an outlet at night, but it shows the images in shadows fighting, blocking the outlet, or the person going to get something out of the refrigerator in the middle of the night and running because they think something's behind them, right? So if you're afraid to enter the cave, it's because of those things that you've conjured up in your head, that there's a boogeyman, there's something in the cave that's going to hurt me, right?
And yes, and we touched on the fact, again, when we talked between feelings and emotions, that, quite often we respond based off of how we feel about something. We base off of some thoughts or memories that we have. So, when we look at our fears, you have to ask yourself, why am I afraid of this? When I worked with, young men years ago in an organization called Polished Acts, we used to teach public speaking. And, it was just amazing to watch a person who might be 11, 12, 13 get up in front of class and is really afraid. Makes me think about the young lady we were just watching. But very afraid to speak in front of his peers. But then after he went through it, I would always ask right in that moment, are you hurt? Did you break anything? Did anything negative happen? And you see their face light up because they almost have to laugh at themselves. They start smiling because they realize, no, nothing happened to me.
Absolutely.
Why were you afraid? And again, we bring those fears in every area of our life, never addressing where they come from and what they're based on. And quite often, they're based on, falsity. So.
Exactly. So like Sanji said, we're much harder on ourselves than others are on us, and it holds us back from progressing forward,
Yes.
Which is so true. We are our own worst critics. Because if you do have to get up and do a presentation, I mean, there's a myriad of things that go through your mind before you even get up to present. And a lot of times once you start presenting, it flows. You're able to get through your presentation. And sometimes you're so in your head that you don't even know how you're getting through the presentation. And people may give you compliments afterwards, but you're thinking that you have done the most horrible job ever when you may have gotten up there and knocked it out of the park.
Yes.
So again, we are in our own heads. We are our own worst critics, therefore our own worst enemies when it comes to moving forward in self-discovery.
Yes. And just making this, also, I want to just throw this in here. It's not so much about being afraid, it's when being afraid of the fears keep you from doing something.
Yes.
Because, like people ask me, when I was teaching, do I ever get nervous before a class? And I said, every time, especially a new class. Like, really, you look really comfortable. Well, that comes with it. I want to come up in front of a class showing that I'm afraid.
Right.
But I would get the butterflies. And if you speak to people who go in front of a large audience, they will pretty much tell you the same thing. But as soon as you hit that stride, as you say, you're so in the moment that the fears are usually someplace else. That once you start that process, you overcome the fear in that moment.
In that moment, right.
Yep. I'll deal with tomorrow.
Hi, Shelley.
Tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us.
So the next thing, and this is something I'm sure everybody would say, well, yeah, I need to work on that, or I know already, is part of finding or being able to answer who I am. You have to also know, who do you desire to be? So once you determine where, everything we talked about so far is defining where you are, the who you are. But you know what? Anybody who's used the GPS, and I'm sure we all have, in order for the GPS to take you where you want to go, it has to do what? It has to know
where you're going.
Yeah, know where you're going.
Know where you are.
Yes,
yeah, your starting point.
Your starting point. So the first few things was trying to figure out, who am I in this moment? Now, who do I desire to be? So what's that?
It says he's always if you're nervous, it just means that whatever it is means something to you. So just go with it and treat it with care.
Okay, I can live with that. Yep, that's cool.
N's our resident actor,
yeah,
vocalist.
It actually, now that I think about it, because I never really thought about it that way, but yes, because if it didn't matter to you, you wouldn't care.
You wouldn't care. That's right.
You don't care.
It doesn't matter.
Like, I don't care how this turns out. So yes, good point.
It doesn't matter, but you're right. But like you said, some of the ways to overcome that is challenging your limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Challenge those things that you have considered obstacles up until this point.
So once, like I said, you seriously ask yourself and give it thought, who do you desire to be? And it doesn't matter what age you are, because you always should be becoming. You then may ask yourself, what does a perfect life look like to you? Now, when I challenge people with these questions, I said, you got to remove all obstacles, limiting beliefs, because the first thing we do, we can't imagine anything because we're so stuck in our current reality, sometimes our past reality, that we don't picture ourselves in a better place, in a better life.
Right.
But for this, and this is not about really accomplishing anything material, it's really just about what would I like, what does a perfect life look like to me? Because that's part of who I am. It's who I desire to be. And here is something else, I would ask people, in conversations about finding their purpose, and like, I don't know what purpose is, I'm asking about their passion, and we're like, oh, I don't know what my passion is. But I think we do. I think we all know that passion is on the soul level, and it's constantly tapping us. And there's where it's more of a hidden passion. So in this journey of self-discovery, you got to look at, what are your hidden passions? Is it, again, he is an actor. Is it acting? Now acting doesn't mean that you desire to be a Hollywood star, but you might I just want to be on stage. I want to play in front of an audience. I want to do these things. You finding that, taking the time to truly understand what's deep within that you have not let out. And here's the thing, those passions, if you don't give them your attention, they will manifest in negative ways because they're that strong.
And they'll manifest in negative ways because you haven't taken the time to figure out what that is that's gnawing at your soul, at your spirit. So I think that is so key to understand, that if you are at that point where you're just so frustrated to the level of what's going on with me, and why am I so frustrated, and why did I react that way, and it's firing on all cylinders, this is why it's so important to sit down and really sit down and stop surface level thinking and go deeper into your thoughts, what, who, when, where, how. Well, really not the how, not the how, because the how is not up to us, but just figuring out who we are, what we're thinking, why we're thinking about what we're thinking about, and processing it on a deeper level is something that we have to get to in order to overcome those feelings of agitation and hopelessness.
Yes. Well, so the next thing you have to be willing to do in this process, once I've kind of gone through some self-discovery, and that includes, again, where I am, where I desire to be, I got to start letting go of stuff. And that may include, again, some of the beliefs, some of the values, things, some of the fears, some of the people that no longer serve the person I am trying to become. That's just the way it is. We can't carry extra baggage when we are trying to become, as they say, lighter, or even say the light. When you're ascending, you just don't carry extra stuff. And that's whether in the physical or spiritual world, it doesn't work that way. We release stuff in order to allow ourselves to grow and move to the next level. So self-discovery is about admitting to yourself or recognizing that certain things no longer serve you. And in the physical world, we could all talk about, how much stuff we keep from past lives that we just keep taking with us from one point to another, and just is clutter. Now, we also know, again, in other aspects of life, that we got to let all that clutter go. So it frees us.
It's like spring cleaning.
Yes.
Every year. Otherwise, you become a hoarder.
Yes.
And when you hoard things, it stifles you. It prevents you from moving around freely. It prevents you from moving forward. You actually can't even go back when you hoard stuff. You're just sitting in a stagnant place.
Yes. You end up boxing yourself.
You're boxing yourself in. No growth. No, it doesn't come out of that. That behavior is just stagnant.
Now, how often have you held on to something? Anybody who's on any kind of spiritual journey will pretty much know, what? If you got a burden, you're supposed to release it. If you're praying on something, you're supposed to release it. how many of you snatch it back? Hmm? You pray, you turn it over to God, to the universe, to source. But then not so long after that, you carry the burden of worry. Because letting go is hard. It really is. But we have to learn that, and again, it is a learned behavior, just like we've been taught to hold on to it, because we've been taught in a way that if it looks like you are not worrying about something that's important,
that you don't care.
right, that you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You should be worrying, this should be amazing. You get scolded, you get ostracized for saying, hey, it's something I cannot control, so I let it go.
Yep. It's like N said that, when you're hoarding and you're piling stuff on, when it falls, it crushes you.
Yeah.
Right? So let go and let God be God, and don't take it back. Absolutely. Because when you lay it down, you shouldn't pick it back up again. Pick it back up again. And that's why we have so many health issues, because it manifests it manifests itself in a way that attacks your body. It attacks your relationships. I mean, it impacts everything in your life when you hold on to self-righteousness, when you hold on to self, when you are afraid and you hold on to what you think is security within yourself. So it plays out and manifests in so many different ways. So it's important that as we go along this journey of self-discovery, to embrace the uncomfortable components and deal with them.
Yes.
Because it's not going to kill us. It's killing us holding on to it.
Holding on to it.
But it will definitely debilitate us in our progress in all areas of our life if we hold on to it.
Yeah, we've often spoken in the past about carrying the stress in our lives, that we've gotten so comfortable with stress that we are often not even consciously aware that our body is in a state of stress throughout the entire day. I said, people go to work in stress and they spend 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever it may be in a state of stress. Then if you're coming home and you're in traffic,
that's compounded.
Yep. It adds to the stress. And when you get back home, and depending on what the dynamics are in your household, you may be rushing to deal with things at home where now you're laying down to go to sleep in stress. And as I mentioned in the health and wellness sessions, is that you understand our bodies were not designed that way. Stress was supposed to be a momentary thing where our bodies would respond to getting out of the way of a saber-toothed tiger. It was for physical stress. Now we're looking at it where our body doesn't even understand or can't differentiate the stress, because it's just there and it's there nonstop. And it truly does have an influence on your health.
Absolutely.
It will manifest in some way. So learn how to let go and trust. As we like to trust the process. Next step, is I touched on it earlier. I kind of jumped ahead, but you have to be willing again to go through the fire, because you have to burn off the layers that no longer serve you. And that's different. If anyone's not knowing who's all in the audience, but I can say for myself, when in the military, I remember them saying, we're going to tear you down to every little piece, and then we're going to build you back up. And now you're right on, you young kids, you're trying to figure out, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen to me? But you later understood why they did that, because we all came in with baggage. We didn't see that as baggage, but we came in with things that weren't going to that served us based on who we were, younger, but wasn't going to serve us for who we had chosen to become.
Absolutely.
So it's that going through the fire. And if you've ever gone through the fire with someone else, how close you become to that person. Mhm. So that could be again, a significant other, it could be a friend. If you're going through hell together, when you come out on the other side, you come out closer, you're bonded. Mhm.
Absolutely.
And taking you forward to who you desire to be, you begin in the now, in this now, the next now, and the now thereafter. You become conscious about and mindful about the decisions and choices you make.
Mm-hmm. And absolutely, and on that mindfulness journey, when you practice mindfulness, you are highly aware of your thoughts, what you're feeling in the moment, what you believe about what's transpiring in the moment. So you have to be mindful. I won't say you have to practice mindfulness and becoming mindful of what you're feeling, because what we see playing out in society today, you can't cut anyone off in traffic or you might lose your life. You can't turn around in someone's driveway or you might get shot at. What are those triggers that are causing individuals to react and respond that way? Right? So on this journey, for our collective group, we want you to practice mindfulness. Be aware of what you're thinking and feeling, even your body sensation. How are you reacting and responding to what is occurring in your environment? And are you being worked up to the point where you're shaking and trembling because someone cut you off in traffic or someone flipped you the bird? I mean, what are you really processing in your mind in that moment? And how can you divert your thoughts to a calmer state?
So once you define, you determine, who you want to be, and that's again holistically. So every part of your life becomes important to you. You start looking at the decisions you're making, and when you bring that into the space of mindfulness, you can ask yourself in those moments, is this choice aligned with the person I desire to be? I told you I started using that when I found myself reacting to things such as, in the moment, somebody saying something wrong and I didn't like it. Like I said, you start off in this journey with becoming aware of who you are in those moments, and then you replay it in your head without judgment.
Without judgment.
Because if, like, you might say, oh, that's not the person I, truly want to be, but you don't have that self-talk and you start calling yourself all kinds of names and downing yourself because you want the best person that you are. You simply observe it, simply say that's not who I want to be, and I will be better next time.
Right. Be compassionate with yourself.
Yes.
If you take nothing away from this, the point is coming into a place and a state of being where you are fulfilled within yourself so that you can show up as your best self.
Yes.
So be compassionate. Already, what led up to the point of having to sit down and figure out who we are those preceding negative thoughts and the negative narrative that we have in our heads that we, constantly converse with ourselves, right? We constantly converse with ourselves. I think There was a stat that we have over 70,000 thoughts
Mhm.
a day.
Dang.
70,000 thoughts a day.
And let me just say something. The majority of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday. And a belief is nothing but a thought that hung around.
It hung around.
Mhm.
So we have to be mindful, of that. Be compassionate, be gentle with yourself. If you can compliment a stranger, you definitely, certainly should be complimenting yourself
Yes.
and encouraging and motivating yourself with positive thoughts, positive self mantras, or
It's
affirmations.
just one thing, looking at Sanji's comment.
Hmm.
Yes, she said stop and think before reacting. And that's how we describe as responding. That's how we differentiate between reacting and responding. That reacting is just a flippant, reaction in the moment to what has occurred. And we look at responding or a response is you've already conditioned yourself and you can think in the moment to stop or do, whatever it might be, but you're basically nullifying the situation without allowing it to get the best of you.
Hmm.
So yes, and that should be, you want to absorb your emotions and your physical energy. Absolutely. Mhm. So the other thing you want to ask about, as you begin to make better decisions, is you ask yourself, will this choice, and I recently heard this in a different setting, but said, will this choice steal time from my future? And I thought that was pretty deep. In other words, will you end up paying for this choice later on? And I think about this, especially when it comes to, say, our health and wellness. I still know people who still smoke, which again baffles me, but they do. Are they stealing from their future for that momentary pleasure? Mhm. So ask yourself, yeah, somebody just said, yeah, observe, not absorb.
That's Sanji.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Mhm. So you begin to ask yourself, are my decision or this decision I'm about to make, will it steal time from my future? And the last thing I think, again, another suggestion would be you want to start building, they always say build circles. I'd say build your concentric circles. Mhm. Uh, so that it doesn't hinder your self discovery, doesn't hinder your evolution.
Hmm.
Mhm. But you want to build circles that are going to help you become the person you desire to be.
Absolutely. You want people who are going to encourage you, who are going to inspire you, who are going to
Mhm.
motivate you, who are not going to sit in judgment, but give you honest feedback, who's not going to attack your character, and who's going to believe in your potential to help you along the path of self discovery, to help you get to a more healthier place.
And you just use the word, which again, which is what I was going to end on. And I just want also everybody to know that Mitchell and I, Coach Mitchell and I, we do not compare notes or anything before we go live. We
You
do it
don't.
individually. So if we say the same things because we're on the same wavelength, or if we say something, that may contradict, it's because we have different opinions about something.
And that's okay.
Yes. Mhm. But you'll say, who am I? Well, I just want you to know that you are,
Hi, brother.
yeah, you are a state of flowing potential. Now it's up to you to be able to tap into that potential. Mhm. And you do it by the ongoing process of self-discovery.
Absolutely.
And just want to end with, as I mentioned in my post earlier today, self-improvement again is wonderful. We all need to be on that path. But self-improvement basically will lead us to a place of being happy. Because happiness is usually a response to an external stimuli. Mm-hmm. As soon as we get something, we achieve something, we're happy. When you do self-discovery, it'll take you to an inner place where you will find peace and joy. which has nothing to do with what's going on in the outside world.
Absolutely. The peace that surpasses all understanding.
Mhm.
So
So that's where, like I said, that's where the two complement each other. So I hope that everybody got a little something out of this awareness session. Like I said, it wasn't full-blown class, but like I said, hopefully, like I said, we gave you some value.
absolutely. And I think the exercise going, leaving out of this session is to ask yourself, really sit and ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? And realize and understand that it's not a 1 hour session. I mean, unless you are just so full of who you are, so aware of who you are, and you're this being that, you walk in the essence of awareness 100% of the time, then this is an exercise that, we can do over and over and over again. Again, as we stated earlier, it's evolving, it's an evolution. We change every day because of, just by association of walking this earth. There's always going to be external stimuli, there's always going to be self-doubt. So we need to really define and be confident in our identity so that nothing can really shake us off course. Because as Coach Darren said earlier, if you have been, if you are a part of Micah 7, if you're a part of our coaching sessions, it is imperative that we understand our purpose. Because as the mantra of the power of now, if you don't start now, there will be no next. Or there will be no next if you don't start now. So really take a deeper dive into searching yourself to find your true identity, your authentic and transparent identity, so that when you show up as the best version of yourself, because that's the only way you're going to be any good for others. And that's what we're ultimately here for, is to serve others. And you can do this, and we're going to close again by practicing mindfulness, journaling, because that is a way of capturing your thoughts of yesterday, today, and you can project your future. It gives you a really good baseline to work from.
And I like to recommend also is I do, I've mentioned this before, I do a session of meditation, prayer, and imagination. You should try to do it, all in one sitting, and you can choose a time, length of time for each one that works for you. But I found that doing that on a regular basis also helps, for the inner journey, the introspection,
Absolutely.
because it's going to come out. Your inner self will come out in those moments. What are you praying for? When you clear your head, all right, and there's nothing, all right, which is the objective of meditation, but you can't do meditation wrong. I always got to make that distinction. But then when you go to the imagination, what are you imagining?
Exactly.
That says something about who you are in that moment.
Yep. And I also like to tell people, get raw with yourself. When I'm talking to my clients, get raw with yourself. If you have to cry, so what? You're in a room by yourself. You're dealing with you. So deal with all of you. So anyway, with that, it's been a pleasure to be before you tonight, Coach.
Absolutely. That has been a pleasure. And again, I hope you got some value out of this. And as Coach Mitchell said, please share your feedback, your thoughts, even your thoughts for future topics.
Absolutely. And we want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to sit with us. We apologize for going over 8 minutes. So have an amazing night, and we will see you back here at the Power of Now next week at 8 p.m. Next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have an amazing night.
PB and J.